Multi-cloud is the future, but navigating the complex path ahead is no easy feat. Even the greatest minds in the market are hitting the rocks as they go through the treacherous waters of complexity, only to simplify these environments so that we can reap the full benefits of multi-cloud that we were promised. Welcome to our fireside chat today, powered by DZone and sponsored by D2iQ. My name is Jesse, and I'm the Chief Technologist here at DZone. I'm real happy to introduce you to a couple of multi-cloud experts here with me today from D2iQ. First of all, Dan Cerulli, Vice President of Product, and Sam Burns, Sales Engineer. Welcome to the show, guys. Now, we're here to pave the way from you as we tame the chaos and show you how to make multi-cloud manageable, secure, and cost-effective. But guys, as we get started, I have to ask the question, why is multi-cloud management so complex in the first place?
I think there's a couple of reasons that multi-cloud management is complex. First of all, it's because the clouds are all different, right? That's the primary reason. It's kind of obvious, but I think you should state it, right? The way you spin up a virtual machine is different in Amazon than it is in Azure. They have different APIs. They have different, all kinds of things are different, right? And you know, everybody's, the way they handle storage is different. The way they handle networking is different. But it's more than just that, because that in itself would be complicated. One of the other reasons, the kind of hidden reason that multi-cloud is really complicated for people is that in general, their cloud efforts in the different clouds started with completely different teams tackling problems in completely different ways. So even if they had, you know, everyone had the same APIs and everything, which of course they don't, then it would still be complex, because in a large organization, and by the way, multi-cloud is pretty much only large organizations. Yeah. They've solved these problems now for 4, 5, sometimes 7 years, and they've built up all this stuff that's completely different and completely incompatible, not just the APIs they're using, but the way they're using them.
That's awesome. But multi-cloud environments are a good thing though, right? I mean, they're moving there for a reason. So they're willing to go through this complexity, but they're just hitting a bunch of challenges, right? So
it's funny you would say that, because you say they're moving there for a reason. Often it's the other way around. There are multi-cloud already. And again, let's say you're taking the big multinational company, right? You've got some division in some, you know, you say maybe in the United States said, hey, let's start building in the cloud. Let's build on Amazon. And you have somebody else who made a different decision for a different reason and made some different choices, said, hey, let's go to the cloud. Let's use Azure, right? And then maybe they bought a company that had decided to start on Google because they really liked BigQuery. So they didn't make an intentional move and say, hey, let's go multi-cloud. One day, the CIO wakes up and says, oh my God, we're multi-cloud. I didn't plan that.
So this is like our accidental infrastructure, right?
Right.
Hitting us right in the face. And as we look at that, it's when people come to me and they say, hey, we're moving to multi-cloud, what you're saying is it wasn't by decision every time, right? So this accidental infrastructure, they've been forced there by their sales team or something that happened, but they're still hit in the face with this thing that they got to overcome, right? And it's supposed to save us money. It's supposed to, I mean, there's a lot around multi-cloud out there right now, but people aren't seeing that. Right? They're not there yet. So we got to try to get them there, which is why I'm glad I have y'all here today. So what are some of these challenges that people are hitting as they're either forced to or moving in that direction?
So I think the thing that most people are doing that sets them off in the wrong direction is they say, like you said, a customer might force you into this. And I've certainly been in a provider where, you know, we were a SaaS provider. We were based on Amazon. We were happy. We had customers who said, our data doesn't leave Azure. So we want to buy your software, but it's got to run in Azure. We want it as a service, but you've got to run it in Azure. And so then we were forced to do it. And the mistake that many companies make is they say, all right, let's start up an Azure team, right? We got a team that knows how to use Amazon. None of their knowledge is going to work over in Azure land. So let's start up an Azure team.
Right.
And you are going to hit two problems there. First of all, they're going to solve things differently, right? The way they tackle logging, the way they tackle monitoring, they're going to solve problems that were already solved by that Amazon team, and those solutions aren't going to work. And second, Well, you're now scaled up and you're running 2 cloud teams. You're paying the salaries of 2 complete sets of SREs, sets of DevOps people, sets of platform engineers. So right away, the way that most people are solving that problem, we'll get the problem solved, but it's going to solve it in the most expensive way possible.
Yeah, this is our multi-cloud money pit, right? You as a VP know this. You've spun up a team,
Right.
and all of a sudden your budget's blown.
And I mean, there is this idea that I'm going to save money by going multi-cloud, and I'm going to be able to say, well, are VMs cheaper in Google, or are they cheaper in Amazon? Sam, you talk to a lot of customers. Have you ever talked to a customer who is able to arbitrage between cloud vendors and spin up VMs where they're the cheapest right now?
Never. They don't realize the tool sets that we provide inside of D2iQ's Kubernetes platform with KubeCost. That the problem is, especially when you look at AWS, right? You have multiple tools. You have Cost Explorer, you have the AWS calculator.
Yep.
But it doesn't. It's not like real time as far as it's a projection, right? But it's not like on your actual integration of all your workloads. We provide that with KubeCost. So when I demo that to people and say, hey, I can tell you what you're going to spend on your cluster and your cloud assets in the next 30 days or the next 7 days, they're blown away by being able to see that, because they can't do that today.
Yeah, and this cluster sprawl where I ran this test configuration and I forgot to shut down my environment.
Right.
I'm sure you never see that, right, Sam?
No. So that's funny. That's one of the reports that's built into KubeCost, where it's called abandoned workloads. So it's going out and we're running queries against any type of workload. And let's say a dev spins up a test environment on a Friday. Well, hey, I forgot I had it running. It runs through the weekend. You're getting charged for all that, and they come in on Monday. Oh, I forgot to shut this down. So there's an automation report that can come out of our platform that basically says, hey, you've got workloads out there that are running and they're dormant. You might want to just shut those down.
Got it. And so talk to me a little bit about deployments. I know you see a lot in the field, and the inconsistency around deployment seems to be something that people are hitting too, at least from what I see.
Yeah. I think there's a serious culture issue across, when you start talking about DevOps and DevSecOps. The majority of the companies that I'll talk to, they'll come in and they'll start saying, hey, we're going to do infrastructure as code, right?
Yep.
So, and infrastructure as code really goes into what Dan and you were talking about earlier, which is, I have my Azure team, my AWS team, I have all my different APIs, how I spin up different environments on different cloud providers. I have to have specific providers that talk to those specific APIs, and I've got to be able to upgrade those APIs. I've got security issues. How do I handle security for upgrades? I mean, there's a lot that goes on there that when we're in this year of looking for efficiencies, a lot of companies are they're blown away when I say, just throw out your infrastructure as code strategy. I'm going to show you how to do it with our CLI and cluster API. So you don't need Ansible anymore. You don't need to have Terraform. You don't need to have all this skill set. You don't need to retain any of this. You don't have to have separate teams. We're going to be able to show you how to spin up clusters across AWS, Azure, GCP all at the same time with the same CLI in minutes, not months. And I'm going to show you how to keep them secure too.
And Sam really hit on 2 layers of consistency, Jesse. You asked about consistency, right? And he, in that answer, there's 2 layers. One is how you communicate with the infrastructure itself, right? And he mentioned Ansible and these Terraform, these scripting tools that will call a series of APIs to set up some infrastructure. And of course, those things are inconsistent between the different providers because they have different APIs, right? And so the move to the cluster API, which is declarative, which is consistent, which we can use on every single provider, provides consistency at that infrastructure level. And then the second level that sits on top is all of the stuff that you have to do to a Kubernetes cluster to make it enterprise ready, to make it ready to serve a production workload, right? Because Kubernetes is a container orchestration, but it doesn't handle the security. It doesn't handle all your networking. It doesn't do backups by itself. You have to make choices around logging, around monitoring.
Right.
And that set of choices that people make, if you have a separate Azure team from an Amazon team and 3 different teams in Google, they're all going to solve all those problems differently, inconsistently. And so when you're doing this right, when multi-cloud is done right, it means you have consistency both with how you are dealing with your clusters and how you're going to create the next cluster, as well as how you are making those clusters production ready. What are you doing for logging? What are you doing for monitoring? Is it possible to have one dashboard that can tell you about your costs across your organization? If you're doing things consistently, you can. And if you're handling things inconsistently, then you're not going to be able to do any of that stuff.
All right. So we've talked about a lot of stuff. I want Dan, if you would just summarize for us for a second, right? We're this multi-cloud environment. What are those key challenges? Give me the top handful. Summarize it real quick.
So key challenges are making it so that you can handle. I'll take on those 2 layers, right? What does it take for you to open a new region? When I was at a SaaS provider and we wanted to open a new region, we were mostly in Kubernetes, right? We're modern people. When I said, hey, we need to move, we wanted to start up without even going to a new provider, just a new region. We want to spin up a region in Europe. Our ops people said, give us 1 quarter, give us 3 months of work to spin up a new region, right? And that is staying within Amazon. And then we had, as I said, we had a customer who said, we need to work in Azure too. They said it's going to take us a year to do that.
Got it.
Right. So that's how to do multi-cloud wrong right there. And the reason was that we had lots of hard-coded, like literally the scripts that Sam just talked about, like what's written in Terraform, what's written in Ansible, how do we modify that stuff? When you move to a consistent declarative API, then you can have one new region. You want to open up a new region, that's literally a change in a config file, right? That's a change in some YAML that will say, I know how to do this, and I'll go and do it. And by the way, I don't care if that new region is in another cloud provider. So that consistency is important. And then, as I said, everything at that top layer, how are you going to handle your security? That should all be built in so that when you deploy that new region, it just works and you're not having to solve those problems again and again and again.
Got it. So as we talk through these challengers, both Sam, you from the field, and Dan from what you're seeing on the in and the outside, we've got the maturity issues with the organization. Sam outlined a little bit how the cluster can sprawl and the cloud can get out of hand and unmanageable, which results in too much cost. The lack of standards, the fact that this API and this API don't match. And, if I'm going to do infrastructure as code, I got to have something that stands in the way. And this inconsistency around deployments, this is a lot of challenges. So now we got to talk about solutions. That's why we're here, right? We're taming this chaos. So a lot of chaos. What are some of the solutions for all of these challenges? Dan, help us out.
So here at D2iQ, we have a Kubernetes management platform called DKP. And DKP has really taken the ideas that are kind of built into Kubernetes, this idea around declarative APIs, and your configuration contains the state that the system should run at. And we apply that not just to the applications running in Kubernetes, but to Kubernetes itself. And this is built into the Kubernetes project. They now have what they call CAPI, the cluster API. It's a declarative API for managing that infrastructure. But most vendors haven't adopted it fully, and they haven't seen the light. And what our product does is it handles that base layer. We say, hey, there's a single API and it's declarative. The way the modern way APIs are called, you give the system the state and the system manages that state. So you tell the system, I need a new cluster. And I want that cluster to be 37 nodes with 5 control nodes this size. And our system handles the rest. And that API doesn't change when you go from running on-prem in vSphere to running in Azure to running in Amazon. It's all the same.
But see,
y'all
never existed. You're talking about D2iQ, right? And y'all never existed though. So how, when I was starting to work on this thing, I tried to do it myself. Right.
Oh.
So that's one solution. That's not going to work. Right. But we'll get to the specific solution, but there are people out there trying to do this on their own, or they're trying something else. Right. So,
well, the way people are solving this today is the hard way, right? The way they solve this today is with people. And the way the old SaaS provider that I was at, not that old, that was not that long ago, but the way they were solving it was literally months and months and sometimes years of effort in order to go multi-cloud. They said, oh yeah, we can solve that problem. No, don't worry about it. We got 10 people, we'll have it for you in a year. And that's the way they were solving it, is manual labor.
And that's not low cost.
No, it's extreme. And that's the high cost of going multi-cloud.
It's people
right
are the
there.
biggest cost.
It's not those resources, right? The cost of a VM here versus there, that's not a big difference. But the cost of spinning up that team to do all that same work that somebody already did for you in Amazon, redo all that work in Azure. Or sometimes it's the other way around. We have customers who they're multi-cloud, but part of their cloud is on-prem, right? And Sam, you've probably seen customers
like hybrid,
who are hybrid, but don't want to do things totally differently, right?
Right.
They want it all to work the same.
Yeah, that's it. One of my biggest customers today does that. They want to be able to run their software factory in Azure, but then they also want to be able to deploy air-gapped. So they want to be able to templatize out of Azure into air-gapped environments. So it's they're blown away when I'm like, hey, we can do this right now.
And that's the beautiful thing about it, right? Is they're trying to do some of this stuff on their own. And Sam, you're just saying it. You're seeing this like real time with the hybrid environments. Like I'm thinking about, and y'all, this is gonna date a lot of things, like people using like K-shell scripts and stuff, pulling automated. I mean, it's kind of gnarly what people are doing. But from my background, and Sam, I'd love to have your perspective on this. I come from the world of like data management, where we have industry standards for everything.
Sure.
Right. So those things work together. So a standardized platform perspective feels like something that is going to be needed in here. And Sam, it feels like you're saying people are trying to do a bunch of stuff, but that would be helpful. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. When somebody says, hey, I really want to standardize this, I'll grab a tool like GitLab or something, and I'll run it right on top of DKP. And then I'll build out some ephemeral runners. So their runners are only existent when I need to run a pipeline. And then I show them in with our CLI, because we're a CLI first company. If you've ever written automation, very difficult to do automation with an API inside of tools like GitHub or GitLab or Jenkins, because you got to pull in JQ. You're pulling the JSON in, and you're like querying the different JSON level, trying to grab specifically what you want. So the easy thing about what we do is we're CLI first. So basically you export some environment variables, you pass that to the CLI, and you kick a cluster off. I think in like less than 10 lines of code, I was able to automate and fully stand up workload clusters. That's a repeatable process.
That's cool. New
workspace, new namespace, new cluster, wherever you want to put it, with all your environment variables and customizing those cluster sizes. So it's definitely, I'm reducing that, and I can do all that and show that in about 60 minutes.
And the solutions that are out there, from what I can understand, right? So we covered a bunch of challenges. The solutions that are out there, like we said, at best are gnarly, and kind of bubblegum duct tape put together. And people are doing the best they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the movie Minority Report, right? And I am on a super 49-inch widescreen curved monitor setup because I'm an engineering mind, right? I have to have all this stuff kind of mapped out. And so one of the things that I know I've heard is this whole idea of a single pane of glass and standardized and all that stuff. It gets me excited because it sounds like to me, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like we have some really cool solutions here that can make it real easy. And so we can actually start to realize some of these process savings, complexity getting a little bit easier, costs actually being manageable to get to a real multi-cloud we can manage. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I think Sam, you want to start pulling something up? And while you do, we have talked about 3 different interfaces so far.
Okay.
We've talked about APIs, right? We have talked about CLIs, command line interfaces, and we talked about UIs, user interfaces. They're all really important. And understanding what job someone needs to do in each of them is very important. We pay a lot of attention to that. What's in the CLI, what's available via our declarative API, and what's available in our UI. And I think what Sam's going to show you, if we can get it so Sam can share his screen, what Sam's going to show you is the ability to do all this consistently. And I think the dashboard, the Minority Report, is the really cool thing to think about, right? But having that dashboard that a person can go to. If I'm the CIO, let's talk about that company that company before that realized all of a sudden, wait, I didn't mean to be multi-cloud, but I've got this one running in this group started up in Azure, this group started up in Amazon, and we've got this company we acquired in Google. If I'm a CIO and I want to understand my cloud spend, I want a single picture of that. Right? I want a single picture of that from a single tool. So what you can see, Jesse, is if I'm now the CIO of this company and I want to say what's going on where, I can see, and you can read right on there, we've got a cluster in Azure, we've got things running on EC2, we've got things running in EKS, so even manage Kubernetes. And we're reading some technical things there, right? And I can see what my CPU is, right? But there's some great benefits. I can also drill in on any of these clusters and I can get detailed stats there. As I talk, I bet you that Sam's going to open his favorite tool, which is KubeCost. Right? I can actually understand what's going on in each of these clusters. And unlike the proprietary tools for each of the individual cloud providers, this is the same across all of them. It also has, as we said in the beginning, same APIs and the same CLIs. So as you know, not only can I understand what I'm spending in the cloud, but the thing you talked about, the most important thing, my people, I don't have to spin up a different team for every cloud provider because I've got one set of tools that is working on every cloud as well as that data center that I'm still operating.
That's neat. So it was showing a combination. This dashboard's amazing. Not only can I see what's going on with the machines, but the actual cost across my infrastructure, which is super huge. Because listen, the finance department in the end of the day is going to make a payment. And it's not going to be whatever I show for Amazon. It's going to be Amazon plus Azure plus GCP and whatever else is in there, right?
Right. And
Nice.
Having this consistency across means someone can get the big picture, the individual teams can get their individual pictures.
Right. And this also has all the automation built in, health report. I mean, this looks like what we were talking about, which is to make it a little bit easy. So now I got to ask the question, you know, how can I play with this? Right. I feel like you're showing me this car and I want to take it for a test drive. So if I want to try this, right, in our environment, where do I go? Where do I get started? I'm assuming we'll have some links on this page, but where are the best place to get started?
D2iQ.com is where you go. We do have free trials, so you can kick the tires on this yourself. I highly recommend doing a trial, trying it yourself in Amazon, saying, hey, what's it like? What's it like for me to attach one of my existing EKS clusters? Super powerful, super compelling, and the real power comes in when you're going to that multi-cloud experience, right? And every one of these tools comes pre-tuned, out of the box, consistent between every single environment that you work in.
Sam, that was awesome. It was really cool to see how everything is all in one place and it's manageable, which is one of our goals today. So thanks, Sam, to you for sharing that. Dan, thanks for all of your insights. Thanks to everyone out there. I hope you were able to take away some real practical things that you can go back and implement in your own organizations to tame that chaos. We showed you how you can make multi-cloud manageable, secure, and realize some real cost savings. So this will hopefully make your multi-cloud efforts work better for your org. A big thank you to everyone once again. And if you would, please just stay on for one more minute and take a survey. Both our experts at D2iQ and us here at DZone always want to do a better job. Thanks. Have a great day.